to start with the introduction and the first chapter of the book, Talking Back, Talking Black. And I'm sure many people have had the opportunity, because it's on Hulu and a couple other locations, to watch. And it was a successful released film. Sorry to bother you.
Yes.
So, I mean, hopefully everyone's here to learn a little bit. We certainly expect, Hayes and I certainly expect to learn a little bit of something about what everybody thinks about two topics that are very, well, you know, two topics really, yeah, that are very near and dear to our hearts, which is Black English and our experience in America. When the subject came up, I'll be honest, for this Paperclips project, the first the first criteria was to be a book under 200 pages. So when it was presented to me, that was my first concern, but I think everything else, narrowing it down to a work that I thought was important, made it the next logical step to pair with this particular film. I think many Americans have worked at call centers, so I believe people will be able to relate to the job, but there's a particular topic that's very poignant in this moment, certainly, that both of these materials touch on and, in fact, explicitly explore. So, Hayes, if you'll introduce yourself a little bit. I think I've talked a little bit here. For those who don't know, Mr. Hayes Moses.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for coming to join us for this discussion. I'm anticipating some lively discussions over the course of these 4 sessions, and big up to Erie Arts and Culture for providing a platform for us to have a discussion like this, certainly relevant in the times that we're living in. But I am Hayes Moses. I'm an Erie native, father of 2 children. I don't know where to start. Very active in the arts community, do a little singing around town, and acting. I'll be in the Mountaintop over at the Erie Playhouse, and that'll be available coming out next weekend and stuff like that. So really involved in the arts here locally. Work at Erie Rise Leadership Academy School in the discipline area, so I'm kind of all over, but really looking forward to our discussions in the next couple months.
All right. So I'm known as a poet here locally, Abdullah Big Wash, Washington. I've worked on a lot of projects in the arts community. Most of my art is geared towards some type of social cause. I most recently had an opportunity to serve on a board to develop some programs in the Allegheny County area, specifically Pittsburgh, with the Heinz Endowment. So when this opportunity came up, I thought it was just a great thing. It's really everything that I'm about. I've been using, I mean, with Hayes as an actor, certainly as well. But, you know, a lot of times people, you know, you can get as deep into a thing as you possibly want. And being able to speak well, whatever that means, there's a lot of study and work involved in that. And this has always been an issue close to my heart, the idea of African-American vernacular English or Black English or whatever, however you want to describe it. So I think the best way to start this would be to open a conversation. If you guys, I'd just like to know what everyone else thinks here, and there's no judgment. How would you define, or what to you is Black English?
Ooh.
I know, right? I mean, there's no right or wrong answers. Let's have a discussion about this thing. Let's just open it up that way. And this question goes out. This question goes out to anyone who'd like to raise their hand right now.
Hey.
Yeah, you out there. Hey now, what up, good people?
Hey,
all right. So good to see you.
Good to see you, sister.
Nice. You be away from home, and I'm in Pittsburgh, so you don't see these beautiful faces often. So I'm really enjoying this moment. One of the things that I try to do with these conversations is be present, right? Like I'm here now. We all could be doing a billion things right now. It's Friday. It's been a long week, whatnot. But the idea of being present, so in that, not being afraid to make a mistake, or I'm just gonna put out what comes to my mind first when I think of talking Black.
Right.
Talking Black is anytime I open my mouth, I represent it, and I proudly represent that. I'm like, I know I'm Black, right? And I speak is what Black is. Now, I've been told I speak too proper. I've been told I got a little Philly, New York.
Right.
They give me it all, right? The spectrum of it. At the end of the day, when I speak, and I think that that's how it can be on a very micro level, be described. We go macro, what's Black? What's Black talk? It's what, I would think that'd be the communities of Black people coming together and talking. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, Blacks talking to, so now when Blacks talk to whites, there's not an exchange, right? And I think that there's, right? So there's not a Black to Black, right? There's not, you know, there's a different kind of language which creates dissonance, but that's neither here nor there. So I think it's anytime, if you define yourself as Black, anytime you speak.
Like
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, that's a fairly good explanation. That does touch on a lot of things that you and I were discussing earlier.
Yes.
Would anybody else like to add to that? Anybody at this point? I mean, either you, Patrick, or Asia. I think we also have somebody else there right now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Asia.
Hello.
Hey there, Asia.
I would have to agree with what Kim said. I was just talking to one of my girlfriends about that. Just in feeling like a other sometimes within your culture or within a certain group, but that it's inclusive to people who are Black. We grew up, our parents are siblings, and so I grew up under those same constructs that Kim is talking about. My mother, if I answer the phone, if someone called me and I answer and I say, "Oh, this her," my mom would be like, "Get off the phone. You don't."
Right.
You know,
Right.
So when I did like become, start moving into becoming who I was going to be as an individual, I would say probably maybe about like 6th grade. I remember moving from Catholic school to going to public school, and people being like, "You talk white," or and calling me names, and me feeling like a other. And I'm like, I grew up, I don't know if you all know me, Gary Horton's my dad. I grew up feeling very proud about being Black. And for people to be like listening to me and, saying you don't sound Black was like, I've heard Black people talk. This is what this is how the people I hear talk, so it is that thing about it, being inclusive, being whoever you are, as far as who you commit yourself to be, because sometimes we try to, especially like this election is bringing that out, we try to pick and choose and try to point and say, no, you're not Black enough, you're not this enough. And the truth of the matter is, this is what you consider yourself. You identify yourself with that, then that's what you align yourself as. One of my sons is very light, and I remember trying so hard to make sure he felt Black enough, and so, or trying to make sure you were cool enough. And the truth of the matter is, just being yourself, is enough. This is, we try to say, well, it's Ebonics, or, or this is what Black people sound like. We come in so many different types and kinds and variations that you can't place us in a box. So Black English is funny. It's kind of like paradoxical in itself, even to say Black English, but it is what it is. I definitely think it becomes, it's grown to be something outside of what we can just slap a label on and slap in a box and say, this is what it looks like, this is what it feels like. So
I think that.
Well, so one of the reasons why we chose, I mean, unless you want to say something right away, Hayes, did you have a comment?
I'm good. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Okay, so one of the reasons why we chose the film that we chose is it very deliberately has a conflict. You can't have a film without there being some type of conflict. And it expresses some of these ideas about the experience in America here, related specifically to our language and the way we speak, and what that has to do with our culture as well as our experience here as Americans, particularly as Black Americans. So it's important to get some things. I mean, we definitely have a direction here, so it's important to get some things out on the table. A lot of times, and even I think two of you prefaced this conversation with the idea, or we've already mentioned this topic 3 times now, the issue of what is considered proper English as opposed to what the expectation is for a Black person speaking English, the English language in this country. And so there's nothing that we can do to escape the idea besides having the dichotomy, but the experience of Black people in America, and the pressures that we have on us, and our ability to succeed in the film, him changing or code switching to speaking with his white voice was an avenue, a very direct avenue of him succeeding. And I think a lot of us face that because there is perception out there, and you can say that it's because of racism or whatever, is that Black English is a collection of errors in English grammar and a collection of slang terms together. And that is one of the perceptions that he's certainly trying to deal with in this book. And I'll argue with you, he's making an argument that actually, as a linguist, which is his profession, he's trying to make a scientific argument that lays out the fact that Black English is in fact a language. And one of his examples is that if you go to Italy, there's the way that Sicilians speak Italian is markedly different, and you wouldn't expect a Sicilian. You would respect the identity of the Sicilians and accept that is their actual language. And you wouldn't expect that the same language from somebody who's from Milan. But we don't have that perception here in America. There is a hidden, there's a lot of people involved in Black history and who are conscious of the fact that Black people are in fact a nation within this nation. And because of that, it's not too foreign an idea. It naturally follows that we have our own language that we're actually speaking. And Jonathan McWhorter is using the fact that this is a phenomenon that occurs in other countries as well, to say that this is something that is certainly unique. In fact, in the introduction, he lists 4 issues with the study of Black English, and he very deliberately chooses the term Black English for another reason that I'll get to. Well, I'll just lay that out first. So there's the issue of us being a nation of people with a common experience. And one of his arguments is that, other people who come here from other areas have their own culture from those areas. And it's not the same to say that somebody, if someone comes here from Jamaica or Africa even, in another area, they have a culture and a language that they also speak as well. And their experience, although it parallels what ours and is definitely integral to our experience here, because, well, he doesn't get into this part, but I'll get to it in a second, that our experience is born out of the experience of slavery in the Americas. And, we're still politically dealing with a lot of the issues and fallout from that. I know, Hayes, you and I were talking about the advancements over time, but here we are, we can still identify and experience some of the same experiences you guys were talking about, your education and experiences at different schools. There definitely is still a continuum there of the Black experience. Hayes, can you speak to some of the parallels in the book that he mentions? He talks a lot about educating. I believe you were a teacher at one point, right?
No, not a teacher.
No?
Worked in
Nope.
school and worked with discipline. But
Okay.
you said in terms of the parallels of the book with
with respect to disciplining, he talks a lot about teaching kids the educational process and whatnot. And I'm sure you've had to deal with some of these issues, but to see that they're continuous, this idea, there's obviously a continuum of language habits that you're constantly dealing with in the educational system with Black students versus the educational system. Have you experienced some moments or teachable moments with children where where the expectations they speak a different way?
Well, I think in terms of you can't get beyond, because I have substitute taught, and I should also bring up Asia Horton is a teacher in the school system with her degree in English of all things. So she would know probably a lot more than I would, but having substitute taught and just, in grading papers or something. And I think even more so with social media now, in the way that people write, with the way they speak when they're talking. I don't know if, I think you're even getting more embedded into what is called Black English. More so, and it's becoming even more, in some ways, a part of the culture just through social media. Watching kids write, they have a tendency nowadays to write as they speak. The author brings up one point in a book where he's talking about a woman who's a liberal in New York, and said her frustration when they tried to say, when it came to Ebonics, let's try to bring Ebonics in to help the kids in terms of their own expression. And she kind of fought and pushed back, saying you're going to make their life more difficult and harder in that regard. But a lot of what I'm seeing now is that this is permissible in a lot of schools at this point. I think people would be shocked to know that. Shocked to know in our educational system that even up until I worked up with students up into the 8th grade, and you saw a lot of students writing as they spoke. And so I'm interested in terms of, and I've always been interested, I've probably more sided with that teacher who thought it might make it more difficult, and the demand for going by the King's English, if you will. But I think it's becoming even more embedded now. Like I said, with social media, the fact that we're text messaging all the time, people aren't taking the time to try to write in what you would call proper sentences straight way through. So I think this idea of language that is, and I mean, the main purpose of language is to communicate. That's why you do it. And people will always find the shortcuts and that type of thing in it. But I think it's becoming more embedded now.
Well, so, go ahead. You were raising your hand?
The idea of it becoming embedded, I think, is, first of all, that's like one of them paradigm shifts for me. The fact that social media is pushing that forward. 1, 2, you have everything in the structure of education coming from top down, right? You got the top white superintendents a lot across the board. You got some Black ones, don't get me wrong. But you have, in the district that we have here, one of them, right there, white principals, white instruction coaches, white, the different types of coaches. And then you have to be able to speak to them. And if you can't, it's almost like I might be American, but if I go to Portugal and they can't speak English and I'm in there and this is theirs, right? Because we haven't opened our schools yet, but this is theirs. And we're trying to move within that system. And if you move within that system and you're not talking to them so they can understand you, you're gonna have some difficulty.
Oh, yeah.
And what else is communication for but to understand and to convey message? That's so when I hear people who are educators or teachers teaching and they feel like I said it. There's an exchange in education. And so if you continue to just put out and it's not being received, you are not a communicator.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so there's a book we started with last year for the white folks who teach in the hood, and are you you guys? Okay. It shifted my mind. It blew my mind because you know how you feel like you're woke and then you get more information and you're like, oh my gosh, I used to feel like, why am I doing this? And the context that they put it in is more from Native American issue because they had people coming in, and then they would come in and they would rate people of their culture. Wow. And to say, this is how you have to do it. You need to work within, you have to change. And in doing that, it discounts your own culture. It discounts the person's culture. It's making one higher than the other. And so we continue this on. We're doing anti-racism training in the school district. And it made me think, then why am I doing this? How come you can't come in my class and just, you know, speak freely? You have to talk this way to be acceptable. You have to pull up your pants. You have to, because you need to adapt. You need to change to fit. And I've come to the conclusion that it's not a right way. It's not an only way. And so when we get to that, where we're empowering other people to be themselves, to, you know, retain their culture, I think it number one, it enriches the story. And number two, it does open up communication, and it makes people feel valued, that they're bringing something to the table. It doesn't, why do I make you sit in rows? Why do I make you come into my classroom and I'm the only one allowed to? Why do I make you have to say, may I go to the restroom? Why am I doing these things? And it really is, it's not, this is supposed to be something built by all of us.
Would that be something like, when you say that, I'm wondering, one of the things that came to my mind, I know chapter 1 in the book opens up and it talks about James Meredith, and it says that he used to pass out a flyer when he would go out. And he would preface it with Black English language, proper English language. Which one do you use? Most people in this room use a lot of Black English and little proper English. Anyone who wants to become an intellectual giant must learn and use a lot of proper English and as little Black English as possible. I am not going to argue with anyone about the matter. You can do what you want to do. However, I will tell you that anyone who continues to use a lot of Black English will never become an intellectual giant. And that's something spoken from
Right. James Meredith, for those who don't know, he integrated it.
You have to do this to be valued or to make it. You have to do this to make it. Sounds like everybody is gonna, you know, be blue collar, working this. What, are we not growing any CEOs these days? Are we not growing entrepreneurs? When's the last time it mattered? You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the people, tech people right now, they're not wearing suits to work at all. But we look at our kids and say, you better have on a shirt with a collar and some khaki pants and pull those pants up. No, that's, you know, you have to speak like this if you want to get a job. That sounds like the people who you're grooming to be CEOs and to be people who are, because this system is set up that way. It's designed for some people to work and some people to lead. If you want to be a leader, you have to talk like this. Sounds like you don't plan on us being leaders, or we're going to have to change to be a leader. And that seems problematic. So
Asia, what I hear you saying is that there should be an expectation that there is interplay and exchange between cultures. And so one of the points that he makes in the first chapter, McWhorter, is that how we feel about a given language more often than not reflects how we feel about its speakers.
Yes.
He makes a point in the introduction that someone speaking with a British accent is perceived to be more intelligent or better.
Absolutely.
Than someone speaking with a standard, what we think of as a standard American English accent even. And so that by itself, Hayes and I were talking, I was just like, even when you listen to British rappers, that's one of the reasons why, like, they're not received the same way as American rappers, because even though they may be speaking a very extreme version of English that is relegated or seen as becoming from the lowest classes of people, it is still audibly British. And so as former members of the British colonies, we still respond to them as if they're somebody from a higher echelon, you know, in society. And so, you know, when you're rapping, you're supposed to be this street, you know, a lot of them reject that persona, but it's still British English, so it doesn't have the same impact. So a lot of your perceptions are tied up into the values that we're
Absolutely.
socially conditioned to ascribe to people who are speaking that language. And so it's just very interesting. And so, I mean, one of the things I also want to offer is that now Jonathan McWhorter is a linguist. That's his field of specialty. So in the entire work, he's approaching this from the science of linguistics. So for him, when he refers early in the book to there not being Africanisms, what he's referring to is just the linguistic aspect of it. And generally, he's talking about the written language. He does speak a lot about spoken language and whatnot, but I think for people in a society, you know, Western society, everything's written down, right? Well,
Right.
so one of the things about African history that's important, there's a book, and I'll show it to you. You guys can look this out later. It's a classic book. It was put out in the 60s, 61. It's called Muntu, and it was by a European named Jan Hasjan. And he writes about African culture and Africanisms, and he explains how these are societies, I wouldn't even describe them as pre-literate. If people understand the way the environment in Africa is, most of it is, they experience high levels of humidity and long, long rainy seasons. So if you were to write something down on a piece of paper, you wouldn't have it very long. So what they've done, and you look at musical instruments, it's the same thing. That's where talking drums come from, is Africa. So you have these drums and all these tools that play music, and the music and the tools have been created in such a way that they replicate speech. And in fact, the drummer, Max Roach, when he went to Africa, he said he was on the Congo and he was playing. And he doesn't speak any African language whatsoever. And the people in the indigenous people were playing music back to his drum. He had a standard jazz drum kit. And he asked his interpreter, well, what are they saying? Because someone explained to them that the drum, you know, everything speaks, whether it's the guitar, everything is a way of communicating a message. He asked him based on what the indigenous musicians were playing, what they were saying. And the translator literally said to Max Roach, they're saying with their drums, we hear you. We hear you, brother. We don't know what you're saying, but we hear you.
Wow.
So they could recognize and vocalize through their instruments that what he was doing was culturally close enough. You know what I'm saying? Like he was sending a message to them, even though they didn't know what it was. It was clear that he was of African descent and playing this instrument. And so it's hard to understand, like a lot of dances and things like that, they're all in cloth, the patterns on cloth, the way that buildings are constructed. You know, if you've ever heard the term of what a griot is, it's someone who travels and tells stories and shares information between cultures and in Africa, from village to village, from country, from nation to nation. And so music is encoded even in Africa with a very direct message. Not like I'm gonna play this song and I'm gonna tell you something, but the act of playing the instrument is literally telling you something that you can interpret as speech. And so that's important, because when you consider that that's where we came from before the slavery experience, you will understand that a lot of the behaviors that we have, certainly dances and things like that, those are also, you know, those are also ways for us to convey information. And so with that, there's this whole thing called the Bantu expansion, where over thousands of years, people essentially from the central Congolese area went south and east in Africa and became the dominant populations across Africa, literally over 3,000 to 5,000 years. And so the culture that he's referring to is related. When he says something is African, he's talking about this as a Bantu concept. So it's broadly distributed over Africa. And the idea is that there are four forces at work. The first is Muntu, and that refers to human beings. The second is Kintu, which is things, objects, inanimate, animate, including animals. Hantu, which refers to the quality of place and time, and Kuntu, which refers to modality, quality, style, rhythm, and beauty. And basically, these are all characterized by this force called Namo, which is the power of the word. And Muntu, human beings, are distinguished for our ability to, we're the only ones who can speak directly.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a characteristic that is seen as essential with human beings. And so we have a culture of speech that is part of rhythm. Everything that we do has something embedded in our worldview in the act of speaking, in the act of the rhythm of our speech, all of these elements. So when we got to America, we may have spoken different direct languages because we were in different tribes or from different parts of Africa. But the idea, the concept that the instrument, the way you play your instrument, the way you move, the way you speak, it all conveys something. So I just think those things are important. The introduction, even though that's not explicitly stated, he does, when you read it, he does speak to the fact that our language is a separate language that works in tandem with the existence of standard American English. He does talk a lot about how English has changed. For everything that people say Black English lacks, he makes an argument that the same thing, if you were to compare standard English today to standard English in even the King's era, the last king of ours, King George, the way English was then, there were more than one way to pluralize something. There was a plural for the amount of ears that somebody had, or the amount, you know, it wasn't just putting an S at the end of everything. So all languages change over time. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, when people are referring to Black English, he makes a poignant statement about 4 things. This is one of our problems. Number 1, when the public encounters the assertion that Black English is more than gutter talk, the argument usually depicts Black English as largely a matter of discarding or distorting standard language forms. Mm-hmm. Hey, you have the book. Can you read the second one?
Hold on a second. You're trying to get what page you want?
21.
21. The second one, partly because of the above perception, many Americans worry that even to acknowledge that there is a Black way of talking may be racist.
Right. Okay, so Kim, who else has the book? Is it just you and I at this point, Hayes and Patrick?
I know Kim did the audio.
Patrick, do you have the book? Okay, so Kim, okay, so you don't have it in front of you, but okay. Okay, Patrick, do you want to read the third one on page 21?
Yeah, sure. The relatively uniform linguistic landscape of Anglophone America encourages a sense that people can't speak both a standard and non-standard form of a language in complementary relationship.
So that's exactly what you guys were talking about earlier, Asia and Kim. There's a complementary relationship here, but if you don't acknowledge it, then it's almost wasted, right? I mean, it just, you know, people tacitly acknowledge it. They're entertained by Black English, but then we get told that our language is deficient. When the irony is, people have made all this money off of hip hop, which is just nothing but Black English. I mean, it wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for the, Black English. And so obviously there's value there, but we're constantly told, that that it's just a collection of errors, even though it's systematic. Finally, number 4, many equate Black English with the distorted dialect that minstrel show performers used, and suppose that the cartoonish quality of the latter requires treating the former as equally dismissible. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, obviously, it's possible to have all the best intentions. And I'm sure just as Black people, we have experienced this dealing with people who mean well, right? But, because of their perceptions of us from the cultural position that they take place in America with Black people, they think that they may assume a position that they have some type of authority or judgment over some of our behaviors that are just, they're going to look down on whatever we're doing because they feel our speech is improper, or they feel the way we are holding our head, or any of these number of things, because there's no complimentary behavior going on. There's no respect. There's no reciprocity. So as you mentioned, the communication, Kim, in Asia, it's incomplete.
It's also funny to me just how everything pulls back to a negative space about us and our language. And to me, it's almost like we always start at slavery, like we just started when we got here. That just seems like everyone else that comes, and if they're speaking English and they have an accent, it's not accepted or thought of as ignorant. It's thought of, it's almost like a pride thing. This is where I come from. Of course, I'm not going to speak like you.
Right.
Whereas all of ours seems to come from a negative space of ignorance. You just don't know no better. You just don't know.
That's the thought that came to me, Asia. That very thought is the actual embrace. I remember my grandfather, or our grandfather, saying he had this experience with this woman from the South who had come up here, where she kept saying, I'm going around the corner. I'm going around the corner. And he finally told her, hey, sister, the proper way to say it is corner. And she told him, I know how to say corner. I like the way corner sound.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that that's a part that the idea that Black English is, at this point, particularly solely the result of not being able to speak proper English, if you will.
Right.
To understand, particularly, I think, and you and I talked about this a little earlier, is the fact that the embrace of it. You know what I mean? It is a cultural embrace. It's not a matter of an intellectual thing of you can't do any better, where it's intentional.
Right. Oh, definitely. So go ahead.
I don't know if you all are familiar. It's a poem called 3 Ways to Speak English. And I think the poet's name is Jamelia Lee Scott. It's on TED Talk. And she goes between code switching, between being in a classroom setting as a college student, speaking like with a Jamaican accent, and then just, like kind of with patois, and then just speaking Ebonics or Black English. Right. And she says, I can talk like y'all, like I can say it like this. And she goes over all the different ways I could say it. She said, but you, the professor, you wouldn't even understand me. If like you talking to me, you wouldn't even understand me in some of my ways that I speak several languages, and to have to be able to do that, we don't count it as a gift. It's people who only can talk one way. You can only, run one way. Whereas something in what you were saying grabs me, because it is like, you only speak like that. Or a lot of kids at my dad's center, I can speak 5 languages. We discount what we can do. Every time we do it, it's hot. They put it on a record, it's hot. It has to be gentrified. You know what I mean? Like, but we don't count it as that, that I can speak like this. And I can answer a phone and get a job. And it shouldn't be like that. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be like that, but that poem is dope. If you get a chance to check it out.
I'm gonna check it out.
Great, you can put it in the link here. I think the next time we do this, I'm gonna put some links in at the very beginning when we get on early.
Oh, that'll be dope.
And that way, because I'm sure I'll figure out this Zoom stuff fast enough. But I'll come.
You act like you're not gonna use that move for your classroom. Right? Do now, watch.
I'm about to try it, y'all. I don't know.
Right. Well, so one of the examples he gives, because this is true for languages in general, how different they are. I think one of the craziest things about it is we're so used to our own system of language. You realize, one of the main differences between Arabic and Farsi, which is the main English spoken, the main language spoken in Iran, is that the grammar is Indo-European and the sentence structure and whatnot. But Arabic, in Farsi, there's a lot of words in common. but the grammar is still like an Indo-European language. Whereas Arabic, it might even be the same words from time to time, but the structure is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so people will know immediately if they're speaking the one language or the other. But
Mm-hmm.
because of geopolitics, because we're
Exactly.
not, I mean, we're butted up against Mexico and Canada, right? In Canada, like, they speak a lot of English because, you know, the history. So we're not really forced to a position where we're working with a whole bunch of people all the time that we have to conform to as English speakers.
Mm-hmm.
And so the cultural context doesn't lend itself to Americans. It's changing, yes, but learning other languages and feeling the pressure of not knowing the language. People will be in situations where they hear people speaking a foreign language, but there's no pressure for them, unless they're just paranoid, to absolutely know what that person is saying, you know? And so because of that, you know, there's just, I mean, like, there's a gulf. I mean, most people in other countries apparently can speak around 4 or 5 languages.
Yes.
Trying to learn Russian has been crazy for me, because my friend thinks it's funny, but
Wow.
he's from Moscow, and he literally, we were talking, and he was just like, you know, you can, in Russian, you can speak like Yoda. And he just started doing it, and I was just like, well, how the hell am I gonna, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, so there's that many differences in language, and as Americans, we're just not aware of it, because no one's putting us under, we're not gonna lose a job because, you know, more than 9 times out of 10, because we can't speak Japanese, or, you know, it's just not the cultural context we're in. And to be in a position where, you know, you don't know how to speak comfortably with a lot of familiarity with a Black person, you know, that's not going to happen for the vast majority of people, especially not white people in this country. It's just not
Mm-hmm.
a pressure that they experience. As an employer, I've had to deal with white employees, and I've always discouraged them from that, because what tends to happen, especially the younger they are, is that they will forget that I'm their boss, and they'll say stuff that they can't take back. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't need to know how you got in trouble over this weekend, how you really got in trouble and didn't show up to work. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, the context is really flipped around, and it's different. So one of the things in the first chapter that they speak about is this whole idea of the legitimacy of the language. And a lot of people have this idea that there are things that Black English can be said better in Black English. But then you get in this whole thing of like exchanges. Well, okay, well, they don't conjugate be. And then there's the idea as a mathematician of continuums, you know, as an explanation. When I first went to college, that was an explanation of why African students did so well with mathematics, is the idea, the global idea of being, and its relation to, there's different, if you're into like logical reasoning and whatnot, there's different continuums that are possible in logical relationships based on grammar associations. So that was a theory that was posited out there, because there was several years where there were a lot of African mathematicians like who were performing well, and you have to, as a math major, you have to come up with new arguments basically for things, and new conjectures and things like that. That was one of the ideas. So we have this thing in Black English called where be is not conjugated. So there's a state of being. There's a state where you're using be, I be, you know, it's the habitual be, and things like that. But he gets into some very basic things, 5 ways that Black English outdoes standard English. And one of them is, the way that McWhorter phrases this is that these are actually different words than words. They're related to the common sounding version of those words in English, but they are in fact different words. He says up, and it's up what? You know,
up in here.
So, yeah. And what he says about that is that's related to familiarity.
Yes.
Right? I think that's pretty immediate thing to understand.
We up in here.
You know, what up? You know, it's not just, you know, what is actually happening right now, but it's asking you about your state of being, right? So it's a very nuanced a word that the way he explains it, it actually performs as a different word than just up itself in English. The next one that he speaks to is done.
Done.
Right? Hayes,
Yep.
what's your impression of the way that he explains done?
I have I got a group of cousins. Asia's not included in that group. But I got a group of cousins. They use that all the time. He done that. Done. I'm trying to think of the proper way
Right.
to say it.
Like when I'm talking to kids in school, because they say done to me, and I say to them, I say it like they say it, and they go, Miss Moses, you know that's not how you're supposed to say it.
That's right.
Right?
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
Is that what you say Asian communication was? We got to be able to connect. You got to be
Right.
able to, you know what I mean? So if you can't hear me with the proper English that I promise you I can pull out, thanks to my mother and father and the education.
Right.
I love saying how you be. I remember a black woman leader told me, she was like, Moses, I think you would get real far if you just, change a couple things up. So what? Like what? She like, I say, how you be? She said, well, why do you say it like that? I'm like, because that's the way you say it.
Right.
It's how you be. Right?
Right.
Because for me, that's how you say it. I like the way it sounds like Coleman.
Right.
Right? What up, Joe? Love that. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry. I just
No,
want
but I was saying
no.
that's like the most common one of the ones he said that and up, but the done. He done that.
Oof.
I mean, he did a really great job at that. I mean, and that's the thing. None of these words are in the Black community limited where you could, and he says that himself in the book that you can't even limit it. Those words break out. He done that really mean he did a great job at that.
Right.
She done that. You know what I mean?
And it also indicates the recent past. That's another part of it, because if you have the idea of an ongoing thing, you have to be able to qualify it too. So there's a lot of aspects to these words, and they're part of like the lived experience of people. And it's important because our lives are so tentative. The experience of Black people in this country, we face so many threats, and the context of that we're in, a lot of our expression is based on our lived experience, and nodding to that, I feel. I mean, the next one that he talks,
I'm sorry.
Next one.
Before you go on to the next one, I noticed how when Kim, you were saying done, it depends on where you put the emphasis in something. Also, it could change it just done, and
right.
But sometimes somebody can just done, like
right.
Well, that's what I said in the book. They said it was for the immediate past, but most of the time that I've heard it, people use it, it's for emphasis, or like I said, to say that somebody did it very well.
Yeah.
Right.
So it could just mean how you elongate it, how short you use it, the tone I'm using it in, and it could be the exact same words, but I mean, we that dope, you know?
So we're aware that there's this thing, and like I said, you're trying to convey things. You're trying to convey things that are subjective, and that's part of communication. And Black English is because of our culture's emphasis on communicating subtle and even overt experiences and information. That's the level of detail that we're communicating on. But for you can't just write the stuff on a piece of paper.
Exactly.
And that's the whole thing. We come from a culture that's very, when people say in the Old Testament that Jews had 470 the Hebrews had like 472 different laws that they had to, we don't have an experience like that in America. But when you stop and you start to look at these cultural traits, these are all things that we're expected to interpret in the Black community, as well as to be able to communicate. And so there's no push, because we're an excluded group, there's no push to get other people to recognize those things in a formal way. But the more successful we are at communicating with each other, it speaks to the amount that we're able to experience it ourselves, I think. I mean, for me, I talk my name's Abdullah. I talk on the phone all day. And when I call people, the majority of people that I speak with are white Americans. And I guarantee, today was September 11th. I worked today. I guarantee you they did not want some Muslim man. You know, a lot of them were taken aback by these phone calls. And my whole strategy, I love, one of the things I love about the movie is my strategy is always, I get my name out there and then I immediately speak as properly as possible. I sound better than you. And then, and you know, people will tell me, they'll usually say, if they have to pick a name, they'll say Bill. You know what I'm saying? Because I got it past them. And now I'm just somebody, I might be a white man, I might be, you know, but I'm just talking to them. You know, some of these people, when it comes down to getting payment information and things like that, they might go, wait a minute, what's your name? You know what I'm saying? Because now they gotta, yeah, I mean, but you want to get to a personal level with them. And that's what I love about the movie, because context is everything. So there's also, he mentions had is a word when you're telling stories. Hayes, we kind of talked about that, is the way that the word, it is used in a specific way when you're telling a story. So what had happened was, right?
What had happened? He had,
and it, yeah. So, I mean, we've all heard this before. And the way that it's used in that sense is it's an actually, in other languages, it would be a word that would simply be referred to that. But it is an English word, but it's doing something that a whole nother word actually would do in another context. We're in an American English context. So we picked a word, right, that fits that role, basically, and we're making it actually do something else. And another thing we have is this issue of, the fourth thing is keeping it real.
Keeping it real.
Right. And that, you know, it has to do with like the way that we pronounce different words. I want to put in the next one a link to that Goody Mob song, Soul Food, and contrast that with KRS-One, You Must Learn, because the way you can really hear in what we call specifically a Southern accent is how people emphasize, there's a specific word for that, how people emphasize certain words. But the very last one I think here in 5 is the way we use pronouns. And this is amusing because, you know, a lot of times the way people use, like we were saying, you know, the way the word ass is used, you know, or you might be like, his ass went, you know, you're not referring to the person's behind, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, so the first example he gives is, how do you like them apples? If you saw that on a piece of paper, right?
Right.
Kim, how would you say that? If you just saw it on a piece of paper, how would you say that out loud? If you read the sentence, how do you like them apples?
I'd read it like, how you like them apples?
Right, but if you said that out loud, how would you know? You would know from experience that the person really said it how.
Oh yeah, they coming at you. That's not.
Yeah.
You're not reflective on your experience with an apple.
Right, exactly. And it's so counterintuitive, but you literally have to have that cultural experience of using that word. If you just came across it on a piece of paper somewhere, there's no way that you would understand what that person was saying.
Or if you watch Good Will Hunting.
No.
Or go.
Right.
That's what I was thinking you said.
That's what I want to tell you. That's what I was thinking about.
I like them apples.
Right. So it has something to do with the way not only a word is pronounced, but the context around it. And in a way, it's a rhetorical device, but he's just illustrating in it that there are many phrases like that, the way that language is used in Black English. When somebody says, get it your damn self, you know, if you read that on a piece of paper, you know, are they telling them to go to hell? You know what I'm saying? Like, or that they're going to hell, you know, like, it's just not, I mean, it's not the same thing. And Black English does use words in that way. And you have to just know, you know, that this is what's going on.
I'm curious to what you would say to, and let me just put the question out. What do you say to the educator who our job is to get the scholars ready for the world, to become responsible citizens, to pique their curiosity. And there's a few other things, but I want to start with that, getting them ready in the sense of professionally. If they are entering into a system that is mainly ran by white folk,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? What level of responsibility do we have in that scenario? Because I think that not teaching code switching to them if they are entering Wall Street is probably not good for them.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I know I've been in situations, not like, I think we've all been in situations like he is in the movie, where you're in a meeting and someone is expected to explain something to somebody in a very direct way. And Black people, a lot of us are known as being good orators. I mean, it's just, you would look at King, you know, so paradoxically, there's an explanation that you can, you can get a message in the most basic, fundamental way over to somebody using, your oratory skills. And if by the time I'm done speaking to somebody about them ceasing a behavior or doing it right, I should be sufficiently equipped, you know what I'm saying, to get this message to those people. Now, the boss might have issued, an email about this thing, or we may have gone through this training, but I get sent to you, and by the time I'm done dealing with you, Abdullah's gonna make it very clear what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. So there are some strengths associated with Black English, but certainly the awareness of how to code switch and when it's appropriate. I think that's a very, I think that is an asset. So it's important to teach people, it's important to prepare people, but I think what he's getting at in the book is that if we're aware of the strengths, of the validity of our culture, and the strengths therein, that we can make contributions in a way that have a very immediate effect. And I think selling the strengths to our own children first, is one way to get people into the idea of, yes, there's this standard form, but you're Black. You know what I'm saying? And you can be as reserved as you possibly can and speak this form of English in order to be successful. But at the end of the day, you may have to use, you know what I'm saying? Some of that Black English to get this message through to either other Black people or to explain something to somebody who generally is defiant with respect to the system that you're operating, that you're working for, or whatever. And I do think
aches though. My heart aches. My heart aches. Just, it's something in that makes me cringe. And I'm saying that, and so it just because it is kind of I don't know. I take my own children. To me, I feel like on paper to say that just sounds so different to me. My own children say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. But then I have to think, why do I make them do that? Why do I make a lot of that stuff? Some of that stems back to even slavery, and some of the things it seems problematic to me. I'm sorry. I know it just seems weird to me to say. You gotta turn that light off. It seems weird to me to say, if you want to succeed, you can't be yourself. If you want to make it, you have to know how to. You have to know how to be less of yourself. And so, Kim, and answering your question about, well, what does the teacher teach? I feel like it comes down to, and this is like too probably, distant to really where we are really in 2020, but we keep begging for a seat at the table. We keep begging. It feels like we keep asking, accept me. I'll talk like you. I'll act like you. Accept us. Whereas I feel like we need to start building our own table. I feel like we continue to tell our children, don't talk like you talk at home if you want to be successful. And I feel like there's something, I don't know, just.
But what would you say about, because that's posed in the book somewhere toward the beginning where they say, because the author doesn't, he doesn't look at it, he says it is informed by racism, but it is not solely racism, and uses as a point of reference the way that white Appalachian people or white people from lower economic backgrounds may speak, or educational backgrounds may speak. So what would you say to that type of a pushback? That it is not solely just based on a race thing, as opposed to what is considered standard English.
Everybody else has a pride tied to theirs. They even, a teacher walked in my classroom yesterday and was like, hey, I like your redneck setup of your desk, because even they have a pride to it. Ours comes from a place of shame and not being accepted, I feel like, almost. To say, stop talking like that if you really want to make it. I don't think that even it might cut down. I'm sorry. Can you check out the world right now? These Trump supporters and everybody else who feels like this is going okay, they feel like this is okay. The way I am, this is okay. This is just the way we are. And they can sometimes still get a job that way. Well, I think it comes different. It hits different from us.
Well,
and so I don't set your children up. But I do feel like, I'm sorry, the more I read about it, the more I feel like, why are we teaching our children not to be themselves? They set this system up for some people to be workers and some people to be leaders. If we continue to work within the system, we're going to continue to get what we get. Unless we start changing things and we start having our own, or we start making it okay. And I feel like that just feels really bad to be like, I feel like that's one reason I have locks and I gave my sons locks, is because I wanted you to really feel like,
yeah, but you as a person with English, I think you and I discussed this a little earlier in this week about people in the proper use of English and when they don't, and how it stands out. We still, because even in terms of Black English, I was talking with Abdul about this earlier, it has even made its way into the mainstream. If you look at intellectuals like Ta-Nehisi Coates, he, while a wordsmith, if you will, he incorporates Black English into his writing, while at the same time letting you know he's doing it of his own volition. He's doing it, he has mastered Black English, and he knows the standard proper English, and he invokes them as he feels necessary or for emphasis.
Then why are we saying in order to be successful, then you have to be able to talk like this, or you have to be able to speak this proper English? Then why
I think one of the assets.
He's somebody we could point to say, listen, you can still talk the way you talk and make it. I don't know why we feel like we need to teach our children, hey.
I will tell you this. I mean, I work with, I'm working on a project with a deaf actor here. And the woman that connected us years ago was doing a TED Talk. And I can't remember if I think I was one of the announcer when she did. Yeah. Her talk was on how important it is for people, now that we have cochlear implants, why it's important to teach children to sign from the very beginning. Because you got all these parents out there and they're like, they don't need that. So until they're old enough to get a cochlear implant, these kids their brains are developing faster than any other time in their lives, and they're not being given grammar. And what it does is it messes with your development of your brain. It's terrible. So her message was to teach learn sign language yourself and teach to your kid, or have somebody do it, because this is going to form them as a person, or cripple them as a person. And so I'm a big proponent of being able to learn the qualities of our language, of our speech, and being able to sell our children on the strengths and beauty of it. Now, in any other country, if we lived in France, we know a little bit of German, we know a little bit of English, we know, because those are the people, because of proximity, we should be learning some Spanish, if nothing else, right? So it's not to say don't teach your kids standard English, but it means we become more aware of it and of our own English, and that we understand where it strengthens our communication and what's beautiful about it. I mean, one of the qualities that people enjoy most in anything, I don't care what you're doing, is grace. You know, there's a quality, because I'm a performer, I know this.
Absolutely.
It's called proprioception, right? And this is in athletics and all the arts and everything else. It's the same reason why you have to physically see a painting in public, as opposed to, you know, you go on the internet and you see it. When you see the real painting, it does something else to you. The experience is different. And proprioception has something more or less, it's more obvious with human beings because we all have a theory of mind. Like at some point in time in your development, you can expect your perceptions to be to be similar in other people, right, from them. Okay, so proprioception, what it is it's a sense of, it's like a sixth sense that you have. So if you see somebody do something beautiful or you hear music, it causes you to want to move. If you see somebody perform an action, it causes you to want to do the very same thing. So, you know, when people saw Michael Jackson do the moonwalk and millions of people saw him do it, it was so beautiful and it was so powerful because we all sat there and said, oh my God, how did he do that? You know, magicians use this all the time. Your body naturally wants to replicate the actions, you know, and the events around itself, especially if you see a person doing that thing. And so that's one of the things that's so profound about seeing someone do something beautiful, or hearing somebody sing well, all of these things. So people naturally know that even though they have negative connotations about Black people, if we're doing something that's athletically beautiful, or we have a beautifully tuned way of saying something, or, you know, all of these things that we pride of in ourselves, if we're more aware of it and we understand that it complements our behaviors, our access in society, we can tune into what we need at those moments to accomplish something or to be. And hopefully you get a point, if we respect ourselves and are informed enough about our own culture, you know, you're going to deal with more and more people who understand something like this, what Jonathan McWhorter is trying to explain. Now, him politically, he's a very conservative person. And that's one of the reasons why I picked this book, is because he is literally explaining the science behind what he sees in Black English. It's indisputable. And so I might not like his politics, but this is a well-framed argument about not only the validity, of course, but just the science behind the language, and hopefully it helps people internally. And I think that will empower people to go forward and deal with this contradictory circumstance we find ourselves in, that you see so wonderfully illustrated in the movie, Sorry to Bother You.
It's funny that you said about the people who would teach their children to sign, because sometimes they don't even want them to get the implants because they have such a culture to it.
Right.
As we look at it and we think, well, why wouldn't you get your child? Why wouldn't you allow them to be normal?
Right.
You know, and they don't want it. They want their children to learn how to sign, and they want them to be embraced in their community. And so to me, that they saw the beauty in it, and they want to make sure that their children get that, even over being normal or, you know, fixed or
right. So yeah, I mean, I just think we need to look at it more as what complementary behaviors, like you guys said at the beginning. You know, how are we complementary? Because I think one of the things, for a while, I kept using this word all the time. People have this simplistic Manichaean model in their minds of cultures and societies. There's got to be a good and a bad. And if you're not me and I'm good, then you got to be bad.
Right.
You know, it's ridiculous. We know when you're a kid, when you're a teenager, right? Every teenager wants to become independent. You think that's the greatest thing imaginable, is to be independent. But when you actually become mature, after you've been out of the house for a while and have to do your own stuff, you realize, wait a minute, it's deeper than that. It's interdependence. That's the nature of the world. That's the nature of society. That's there's nobody. If I were the richest man in the world, I would still depend on other people for my success.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's when we get to the point where we understand our interdependence, and we can create an environment that functions interdependently all the way around, is when we have something that's holistic and actually whole. And so that's my answer to you, is this is all part of a growing interdependence. And you're seeing it, you're seeing society change culturally in many ways, but unfortunately what we're experiencing now is there's a serious collision of class and a breakdown in the economy, which it'd be great if the economy was like great and then everybody felt like they had opportunities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's another great thing about this film, is because it's explaining like this cultural breakdown and the whole issue that we're going back. The guy's literally selling slavery, So when you look at a lot of these labor issues and stuff in the film, like that's the problem. America's undergoing this crisis where more and more people are being left behind. And so we're actually replicating things that at other stages we thought were terrible, and we're going to get away from this and this will never happen again. And so, my answer is that, we have to take stock in the strengths that our culture has, specifically as Black people. Mm-hmm. And we need to become the best advocates of those cultural traits for ourselves. And we also need to learn the context we're in and how to respond in those contexts. But we can never stop selling the things that are beautiful in our culture and in ways that do make an impact. Well, one of the things I used to love to do as a store manager is when I had somebody who would come in my store. I had a Magic Johnson store, so it would be funny. Like if somebody came into my store and did or said something racist, it would always just irk me. But it's like, okay, well, if this person knows that they're going to a Magic Johnson store and they're willing to behave this way, they're either pretty dense, or they're just racist, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I would literally, when they would have a problem, would go to the only white person on the floor. I would just tell my supervisors, yeah, go ahead. I'm going to observe, and if he's going to think that you're the manager, then let's keep this act going, right? And I would do everything in my power to really determine where this person was coming from. And I would not let them in on the joke. And then when it got out of hand or got to a certain point, I'd be like, sir, I'm the manager. You know what I'm saying? And now you're going to try to change everything and reframe and act like I didn't just see what I just saw, right? So you got to find a way to take what your strengths are and maximize them in any situation. And you have to be responsible for, you have to be aware of the context that you're in. The film, a lot of films that are about deconstruction, a lot of works of art that are about deconstruction play with context. And this film, Sorry to Bother You, does a great job of doing that. So, I mean, I've had fun with you guys. Is there anything anybody else wants to say just to end this last session? We just want to talk about the introduction in the first chapter. We'll get into more of these issues with the rest of the three other sessions we're going to have. Does anybody else have a comment? Okay.
Been great. Well, been great.
I think
enjoyed the feedback.
Yeah, I did too. Let's just try to bring some more people in here. I particularly don't think anybody came off as judgmental or anything like that. But we want to hear what other people have to say. I mean, I've read the book. Hayes has read the book. Some of you, Patrick, you've read the book. Kim, I believe, read the book. Asia, did you get a chance to read the book?
I didn't. I wasn't fully. I had spoke to Hayes after I saw that he was doing it, and I signed up. But I love to read. I have 3 sons, though. Sometimes I don't get a chance to. But no. I would love to. I'm a nerdy type person. So now that I know, I'm gonna be prepared. I'm gonna be highlighted.
Good.
I'm gonna be ready.
I'm so glad you came through.
Now I understand what we doing. I'm jumping in. I understand. So I will be prepared.
I'm so glad you came through.
Good.
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah, we just, I mean,
And Abdullah, you know, I know you too. But so when I saw you and Hayes on there, I was kind of, I got the email maybe or something I saw,
right.
and I signed up and I spoke to Hayes and I said, oh, I signed up for the thing that you're doing. I thought you were doing like a panel. I thought it was like people talking about something. Now I know. I will be prepared.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Thanks
I mean,
for having me.
excellent.
I had such a good time though. I really
I love it.
Thank you.
Love
yeah,
it.
we're gonna do this 3 more times, and it's gonna be 2 weeks from now, literally. So just let's try to get the word out some more, and get some more people in here. I hated the fact that I spoke so long. I just want to make that clear.
Oh, you good? You got good info.
No. But I mean, we want more discussion, which is one of the reasons why Hayes and I kind of like we talked about the ground rules. We want to start this with some discussion because, dude, it's just one of those habits that people have to do with social relations and whatnot. We're usually set up to like sit in front of some lecturer, and then it's just like that's not what we want. People don't learn the best that way. People learn from being challenged and things. So, but thank you. Hey, thank you, Patrick.
Yeah,
And then,
we have I think 8 complimentary copies still. So if anybody needs a copy of the book, please.
oh, wonderful.
Great.
What do you need?
Wonderful.
Just my address or something like that?
Yeah, Asia, if you want to email me, it's patrick@erieartsandculture.org, and we can arrange a time. I can either drop the book off to you or you can come pick it up, whatever works for you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I didn't get your email. Does Hayes have it or?
I have it. I'll send it to you, Asia.
Okay.
Asia, can you
Thank
grab
you.
mine too? And then you'll have to see me. You can't avoid me if I. My book. Yes.
Love you.
Yo, if you grab
I
mine.
love y'all for coming through.
Even though I would love to see Patrick. Patrick, how you be, sir?
I'm doing well. Good
Got
to
the
see
hair
you.
all long, looking like
Right?
he ready.
I'm grabbing both our books.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Right.
Would it be easier if I just picked it up from you, Patrick, or?
Whatever's. I mean, either way, we're in Erie. We're not that far away from.
Yeah, I work at East, so. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll get you your copy, Kim.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Y'all.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all so much for coming
Thank
through.
you for coming.
Thank you, Patrick.
Do it again.
All right.
All right now.